without going into the whole laws of learning, which someday you might like to read volume 3 of the Unified Theory, and then you'll know everything in the world about the laws of learning. But there is something called schedules of reinforcement. It's the way reward is given. And the two I'm referring here is variable ratio instead of fixed interval. Most of modern education is based on what's called a fixed interval schedule. What a fixed interval means is, after some known period of time, the response after the known period of time has finished is the only response that can be rewarded. So if you respond before the period is over, you don't get a reward. If after the period of time is over and you wait for quite a long time and then respond, that's when you get the reward. So you don't get the reward. Just say for instance it was an interval 10 minutes. Doesn't mean you get a reward every 10 minutes. The first response that occurs after 10 minutes, if it was right after or if it was an hour after, it is still, you wait till the response after 10 minutes. In the 10 minutes before, you can't get a reward until the 10-minute period is ended. Then the first response after is when you can get a reward. Now what this means in a practical situation like education, the way exams are usually, is on what's called a fixed interval schedule. In other words, when you get the syllabus for the class, it says you'll have midterm at this date, and midterm at that date, and final on a certain date. So they are 3 intervals, 3 specific fixed intervals. And if you were to, say, be ready for the exam before that, there's no reward. The only reward is to be ready on exam day. So here is what the graph looks like for variable interval. So what you see is, for maybe 2/3 of the interval, there's no responding at all. Many students don't even bother to study for the first 2/3, right? And then some of them start to study, but right at the end, the rate of studying goes way up. And so this is a very inefficient way to do learning, right? If you have a 4-month course, to only do a lot of learning, responding, or studying for a few days out of it, when you could have done it for 100 days out of it, is a very inefficient way to learn. But because of the way human beings are, if we are offered a fixed interval schedule, this is the normal way of responding. Animals and everything respond the same way to fixed interval schedules. They learn not to respond when you can't get a reward, and to increase the rate of responding as you get to the point when reward will be available. And so I suggest instead one called variable ratio. Now, what variable ratio means is, instead of being based on intervals, it's based on a ratio, meaning how much work is done. But it isn't a fixed amount of work, like if you got rewarded for every 5th page you read, that would be fixed ratio. But in this case, it varies on different amounts. And this would be equivalent to a class that had pop quizzes. When you go in, you never know when there will be a pop quiz. The kind of graph that the behavior gets on a variable ratio is like that. A constant high rate of response. Because the more you do, the more you get. And there is always the possibility of reward available, because you never know how long it's going to take. So this is the way to get the greatest amount of behavior. So if it doesn't matter what the behavior is. So if it's study behavior, you do variable interval. It's a very inefficient way to get studying done. You do variable ratio. It's a very efficient way to get studying done. You get lots and lots of studying done. And this is essentially what we will be doing, although because we are going to fix the number of pages, technically it will be a fixed ratio. The schedule for fixed ratio looks almost identical to this. I won't even bother to draw the difference. It's such a minor difference. So variable ratio and fixed ratio because they both work on the basis the more work you do, the more reward you get. This one, you can't increase the amount of reward you get. You can only get one reward after each interval. So it's a terrible, terrible schedule to set up education on. I mean, you can see you would get, I don't know, 10 times or more amount of actual responding done on a ratio schedule than you would a variable interval schedule. The worst of all possible schedules you could put it on is the variable interval. That's the schedule that gets the least rate of responding of all. Variable ratio and fixed ratio give you almost an identical amount of very high constant rate of responding. For the reason that reward is always available, and the more you do, the more you get.
Does it mean that we don't have final exam? Is it?
Well, it doesn't quite mean that. In the personalized system of instruction we'll be using in the school, we will, for the school we won't really have final exams, but we'll have some exams along the way to be sure. But the exams actually are fitted into the variable ratio schedule. So whenever along here that you are ready to take an exam, you can take one and get a reward. So the more you study, the more reward you can get. The exam, the midterm, if you have like midterm exams, they can also be fitted in intermittently. So whenever you're ready to take the midterm, say for instance, after you finish 5 units, you take an exam over 5 units. And so that just becomes part of the schedule. So you never really set up a situation where somebody needs to do last-minute study. The situation makes itself so that the only reasonable way of responding is to just do a lot of work all the time. Because basically we like to get as much reward as possible. And see, this is one of the things that comes from knowing about the laws of learning. If you don't know about the laws of learning, you have no idea this is the case, right? And it seems reasonable to teach a class and have a couple of midterms and a final at fixed times, and what's wrong with that? But when you look at like I say, we're not just talking about students studying rats and lever pressing or amoebas and you know, finding food, whatever it is. If it is on a fixed variable interval schedule, every schedule will work out this way with what's called scalloped. Slow rate of responding for the first 2/3 or so, then it starts to accelerate, and just before the end of the interval, the rate is at its highest. So anyone who knows the technical aspects of the laws of learning would know this. But if you don't know them, you would have no idea. When possible, reward correct schoolwork with the opportunity to do more schoolwork. That's actually built into the personalized system of instruction. When you break up the school book into units, say they're 5-page units or whatever, however many pages is in each unit, you cannot take the exam on the next unit until you have passed the unit you are on at 100%. So the reward for getting 100% for studying and learning and getting 100% on the exam on 5 pages, the reward is you get to study and learn and take an exam on the next 5 pages.
For example, if you're giving the child a star on his graph for finishing that 1 unit, so that would mean that he's not going to get the next star unless he finishes the chapter.
Well, he doesn't even have the opportunity to get the next star. It's just not, it isn't that he won't get the next star, he doesn't even have the opportunity to get another star until he finishes that gets the first star for the first unit.
So the child would know that he can only have the star when he finishes. So it's up to him how fast he can.
Yes. And one of the things I have been thinking about doing about homework is getting to do homework a reward. Like if you are able to I mean, we may have some homework that is obligatory. But we may have what we could call special homework. And like you get to do some extra pages of work for, we talked about overlearning before, about getting the children not just to know it at a bare minimum to pass an exam, but learning it so well it's automatic. So maybe learning something well enough to pass an exam gets you the opportunity to do 10 pages of overlearning, say math, right? You get to do 10 pages of math problems in homework, and that's your reward, and you can't get the star for that unless you do it. So you can have extra stars. So, and maybe you have like red stars for finishing each unit, and a gold star for each special you do. So we actually get the children to be caring so much about learning that getting the opportunity to study and do some schoolwork is their reward. So we'll see how we can work that out. Then also, have the children teach much of what they have learned soon after they are introduced to new knowledge, so that information will get fixed into their consciousness. See, because we're going to have in each class children at several different levels, no matter what level you are at, almost unless you're at the lowest level, there will be somebody under the level you're at. So therefore, each time you learn something, both to help the person who is below you learn it and to help you fix it in your memory, after you have learned it, then you tell it to someone else. So we'll have, a lot of child-to-child interaction, plus more communicating skills going on, plus information fixed in their minds, plus the kids who are on the lower end getting the benefit of the knowledge from the kids who have moved on a bit further. Also, it gives them a lot of good feeling and self-esteem, you see, to be accepted that, oh, I learned this well enough to teach it to somebody else.
Let's say during the science class, a child is well advanced, so could he, alongside the teachers, how is it going to be after he's finished his work, or in a free period, or in a break?
Well, I mean, if somebody is really way ahead, there's no reason a teacher couldn't let that child do the lesson for one of the groups. And then they get some experience teaching somebody else.
So it is possible that during the class they could do that.
I mean, one of the things that's considered important in this type of education is for everybody to learn from everybody else. And even the teachers even as teachers, when a child is teaching someone else, you may see some method that they use that you don't use. Because, I mean, it's well known, children learn very well from people who are just a little older than them. Because somehow or other, like if you're just, say, a year older than somebody, even if you're the same age, but you're a year or two intellectually advanced, you really know how the person you're teaching thinks, because you just were there just very recently. So you know how to say it to them in a way that they are likely to understand it.
So they know how to communicate.
Yeah. So all of these things, you see, we will have to try out, and then each one of you find your way of making it happen successfully. So I can tell you the general to do, I can't tell you the specific on how to do it, because it depends on your way of teaching and your manner of communicating and the children in your classroom and a whole lot of other things. But in general, we would like to do quite a bit of this. And also, you have that many more people teaching people something. So I mean, there's just huge benefits in it. The people who are teaching it will remember it forever, and you have a lot more people teaching it, and You have children learning it from somebody older, the teacher, and somebody just about their age. So benefits all around. So we're on to 25, I think, or did I miss something? Yeah, number 25. We want to make prayer time an event that the children really look forward to with delight. So we don't want it to be, oh no, it's prayer time, I've got to go, pray now. And I was helping somebody a few years ago with a preschool, and they were having some, the children weren't, it was hard to round up the children for the prayer, and also while they were praying, the several preschool teachers, they didn't just let the children come in and pray. They wanted to get everybody perfect in like how they stand and each thing first, right? Now, when you've got a group of preschool kids, by the time you're getting one ready, you move on to the next one. The one you just got ready, by the time you're 2 down the line, the first one you got ready is no longer ready. So we've got to accept in the beginning shaping process, right? So we will tell them the right way, and some of them, they won't do it all that well in the beginning. We just have to accept that. But we keep showing them and encouraging them more and more. But one of the things we did was, like in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whenever it was before it was time for prayer, I got some of the other teachers to be going around to saying to the kids, oh wow, look, we're going to get to pray in 10 minutes. I'm so excited, this is really great. So it was like the kids get to look forward to, isn't it going to be fun when we get to walk in the prayer room and we'll put down our prayer mats and we get to pray? And the kids, oh yes. And we get to, when we pray, what do? You get to talk to Allah. Oh, this is going to be really exciting. So you won't see Allah, but He can hear everything you say and see everything you do. So this will be really fun, won't it? And then they get sort of excited about it. And it is important because, a lot of people, when they pray, when you pray, you have to do certain things, but before and after, there's often not much indication that it was a wonderful experience. It's like, okay, I just went through and I did these things, and the kids need to see adults being really happy that the time to pray has come, and then afterwards maybe saying some things about how nice it was to get to pray. And then that's the way they will start being. Basically the children are going to be in their life the way the adults are around them. And so, we want to do whatever we can. And like I said, one of the things that I think is counterproductive both to learning to pray and to enjoying to pray is to have somebody coming and keep moving you into exactly the right position. And sometimes the adults get a bit frustrated and somebody will have their hands, like this, and they'll move their hand down quickly, jerk their hand down if it's in the wrong place, or jerk their foot into the right place, and that doesn't make people happy. So we'll tell them generally how to do it, and we'll give some praise for those who are doing it right, and we'll also have some prayer time that isn't during prayer time for practice. So we can, so you don't have to go through, it's because you can't interrupt the formalities while you're praying to be giving instruction, but when you're practicing, you can. And we need to have a practice, and then the children who are doing it right, they get lots of praise for doing it right, and we can say to the others, you see, oh, that's how you hold your hands. Can everyone hold their hands like that? And then when everyone does it, oh, that's right. Well, all of you are doing it just right. That's really wonderful, So we want to teach them to pray with lots of good feeling like that. A question arises, which, to be honest, I don't have an absolute answer to. What if somebody says no? Time to pray, and somebody says, I don't want to. You may not get that, but you might. Because at home, I know, because these kids will be at an age they're not obligated to pray. technically, we can, it's not justified making them pray, yeah?
We could give them a thinking time, give them the reasons to why they should be praying, and then let them think about what do they want to do.
See, I think forcing somebody to come in and pray is not the way to do that, right?
That's what
Yeah.
my son should.
So
Just see them every day.
So I think we'll have to accept that if somebody really says no, and because, I mean, we're not really allowed to make them at their age, right? So we'll say, okay, well, it would be really nice if you did. We would really love to have you. We're going to have a good time. But you can sit, but we want to have them do a task that is not a lot of fun. See, we don't want to give them an alternative that is a lot of fun. So you let them, you say, okay, you can decide. Maybe you can just sit in a chair while everyone prays. You can sit outside in a prayer, or sit over to the side in a chair, and you don't have to pray, but you can just think about anything you want. But we'll be really happy when you come and pray with us, because it's a lot of fun. We'll miss you. I don't think we can really do much other than that. And I'd mentioned this one before, number 26. At school, the children should feel loved and cared about. So it isn't only when the children first come to school they get a nice warm greeting and that we occasionally use words of endearment, but our overall relationship with the kids in the school has to be one that the children all the time feel that they are with people who love them and care about them. And if they can have that feeling, of course, they will always be happy to be with you. There will never be a time when they don't want to be with you. And whatever activities you want them to participate in, they will like to participate in. There is another general thing which isn't on your list, but I'd like you to add it. Every moment should be planned for. Because one of the things I've noticed, like when I went to observe the school in Indonesia, that's hopefully going to be our model school there, lots of the time went really well. But there were certain times, and these times are they're called transition times. So transition from one activity to another with young kids always offers the possibility for things to go wrong. So you need to have structured transition times. When you're going to go from one activity to another, particularly if it's movement from one place to another, you have to have a structure for it to happen by. And probably it is a lineup and walk in a line. Because otherwise, you can get kids who are just going to run off and do whatever they please, because there is, during the class activity there is structure, but between activities there is not a structure. Yes?
I'd like to give a suggestion here. For example, if before prayer time, maybe the children, when they're lining up, one puts their hand in front of the, puts it in front, and they could sing in a sheet maybe. And children love singing, and they would look forward to that. And they would move on to the prayer room in order to
And also, we can have different orders of lineup, to give some variation, maybe from tallest to shortest and shortest to tallest at different times, just so there is some variation. So everyone isn't always in the front or always in the back. But also, when the children come to school, we don't want them to have unstructured time before school starts. You see, I noticed this at Adi school. Before they have an assembly, kids just run around anywhere in the school and do anything they want to do. Well, this offers a potential to do a lot of wrong things. And during structured time, the children will probably be doing what they're supposed to do. But as soon as you offer them unstructured time, they are likely to do whatever they please. So from the time they come through the gate, they should know a series of things that they should do. They should go do this, they should get ready for this. You know, we're apparently going to have a flag raising ceremony and sing the national song and maybe do the Khalifa oath or something every morning. And so we need the children as soon as they come, because they'll be coming at a little bit different times, to know what they have to do to prepare. And they need to have a place where they can go, and they need to have some regulation about what they can do during that time. You know, really during playtime, during recess or whatever you want to call it, that is the time when they can do almost anything they want, but even then there will be some rules. Like at the school in Indonesia, one of the things the kids like to do during their sort of free playtime was scream as loud as they can. Well, I think that is not a very good behavior, so we suggested, you know, we have rules, general rules covering what you can do during playtime, right? Even when you're outside. You know, if you run, there's only certain places you can run, and inside the school building is never a place you can run. So there's never ever an opportunity to run in the school. So that as they know, right, there is always a structure on how you move through a school, and that structure does not include running.
So you need to come up with rules inside and outside.
Rules everywhere, right? Every moment at the school needs to be structured, even their free time. Structured meaning there are limits to what they can do. Sometimes, because of the nature of activity, the limits have to be very narrow. If it's during playtime, the limits can be very wide. But there will always be limits, and there will be always, other than free playtime, there will be always specific things for them to do. And we do want to have a lot of stress on before you go in to pray, getting the right attitude. You know, they're getting a lot better at Addi school now, but for several years before prayer, it used to really bother me. The kids would run and scream because it'd be like maybe 400 kids in the area, and no adults for like 10 or 15 minutes sometimes. And the kids were just out of control and yell and scream and run, and then all of a sudden, you know, then it's prayer time and everyone's supposed to just stop that and be immediately ready for prayer. Well, you're not, you know. So the idea is when you're in the area, when it is a prayer area time, that you act respectful to Allah. And we need to teach them that from a very early age. So that would be part of the structure, right? When you come down to the place where they are going to pray, and you know that it is for prayer time, then you always come down in a respectful manner, and it is not the time for, you know, running around and yelling. And sometimes the kids bring, I mean, you know, they even bring packs of cards into the masala and you know, play cards right up until it's time to pray.
We'll be having our social time right after break.
Yeah, what?
It's lunch, break, and then Zohar prayers.
So we'll need, if it's lunch, break, and then suba prayer, we'll need to have sort of a wind-down time after, you know, getting hyped up for sort of free play. And then, see, and that can be sort of worked in. The children can understand. Oh, now you've had all this time to, you know, get all your energy out. Now everyone needs to, in their mind and their body, they've got to get calmed down. They have to start thinking, now we're going to talk to Allah, so we have to get ourselves ready to talk to Allah. You know, it's not just that not just quiet down before you pray, you see. You need to give them a good explanation about why you need to calm down and what kind of things you need to think.
So the wudu part will also come after the break. They will have to perform the wudu and saying these things.
And we need to get the idea over to them about the sincerity of feeling during wudu. It's not just a matter of washing in a certain way. It's a matter of washing in a certain way with a certain intent and attitude, and why they are doing it, because you want to get yourself really nice and clean, because you're going to spend some time directly communicating with Allah. So all those things we need to plan. See, absolutely everything we want to have it run well. But through all this, we still want to give the children freedom, you see. We want them to be free to choose, but we want them to choose rightly. So we want them to choose to do the things that they should do. But we want to have limits within the various activities that are appropriate to the function of the activity. I mean, if the activity requires listening to the teacher tell you something, it's a very limited range of things you can do. Basically, you are to sit there, not fiddle with things, look at the teacher, not talk to anyone else, and listen to everything the teacher says. That's basically the range of activity then. When you're having playtime, you can do pretty much anything you please, with a few minor exceptions, like, if you want to be a little bit loud, that's okay, but screaming as loud as you can is not okay. And these things like screaming as loud as you can, they will always happen, you see, because it only takes one person to do it, to try it out, and then you can just see the screaming as loud as they can doesn't happen until all of a sudden somebody screams as loud as they can, then everyone else does, because they want to follow. So we'll just have it so we'll get them to understand whatever level of sound is appropriate for play, and it can be quite noisy. But quite noisy is very different than. Are you holding up that sign for me? Because I can read it, but hold it up. Anyway, what it comes down to is really be careful about this, right? That every moment in the school should be planned for. So there is never a time when the children do not have an expectation upon them for how they will be or what they will do.
So entropy.
Well, we don't want entropy to be taking place. Entropy is the movement from order to disorder, technically, right? From order to chaos. And it is amazing to see how quickly a group of kids can go from order to chaos. They can be standing there in line after the assembly, and it is time to go to class, and the whole group just breaks up and runs any way they want, anywhere they want. You can see that happening if you have no control over what goes on. And all of these activities, we want them to get them to perceive them as fun and something they like to do. This is why it's nice to have something they can do as they march into class from assembly time. Yeah. And it gives you a reason to stay with the group, and plus you're saying those kind of things. So there's a lot of reasons for doing that, but in general, you'll be surprised how better everything will go if all time is planned for. See, a lot of schools don't plan for certain times, right? I mean, between classes, often children are just pretty much left on their own to go between classes, even young kids. And always I see running in the hallways and that when the kids are just left on their own. And they get loud and movement between classes is not really the time. Certainly no time inside is the time to run. But also between classes is not an appropriate time to get loud. They will only get loud if it's unstructured and unplanned time. thank you all very much for letting me tell you some more things today and for listening quite well. And remember, part of the task later will be to take all of these things and put them down on a list for yourselves as, you know, what everyone will be doing in the classroom and in the school.